So we just got to the new 1.1.3 patch live in game as of like 5 minutes ago. And well, I want to address this specific comment here. The Diablo 4 team has been diligently monitoring your feedback. This seems to be slightly true. Now, I know it's the most popular opinion to absolutely bash on Diablo 4 and say it's the worst game ever. I don't think that that's the case. I don't think it's a terrible game. I think that season 1 just didn't live up to the expectations for some people. And when you look at a patch like this, 1.1.3, it really doesn't do what we really wanted. As they say, they're diligently monitoring our feedback. Well, if they were, then some of these changes seem a little bit odd. And I want to basically talk about the proper changes that most people would actually want rather than what we're seeing in here. Because this is like close, but not really what we actually wanted. So first off, the crowd control sources. I've talked about this previously, but essentially this doesn't really fix the crowd control issue. The problem is that a lot of the base durations are just too long. And then on top of that, the ability to break CC is a necessity in every build. And if you have a build that either has too long of a CC break cooldown or potentially has some sort of inability to acquire CC breaks. Think of like the Necromancer, right? Blood Mist is like the only way in a lot of builds, and that's a really long cooldown. That's just not enough. So there's got to be some sort of adjustment towards CC to make it so that there isn't as ridiculously punishing and uncounterable by some classes, okay? That's really what needed to happen. But then there was another thing about the death explosions, which are decent, right? But something that a lot of people brought up that were super excited. This right here, the miscellaneous one. We're adjusting how affixes are displayed on item tooltips. This change will lay the foundation for our ongoing work of making random affixes easier to compare. And the affixes on items will now sort consistently. People were super excited about this. Problem is that you still have to look through your pieces of gear to try to find the ones that you're looking for. Oh my goodness, this doesn't really fix anything. This right here, the seasonal mind class filters in the Codex of Power. Now remember the previously selected settings. Cool. Now we don't have to reselect them. That's not really the issue with these quality of life changes. It seems that they know, looking for your affixes or trying to sort through gear is a very unfun and annoying process in the game. And yet they're not really giving us the quality of life that actually fixes this. And what I mean by this is, if I pull up the game here, there are two critical things that must be added to the game ASAP. Okay. The first thing is a search function. If I'm going through here and I have a bunch of items here, I need to have some sort of search function here to look for a specific item. Okay. The ability to go through here and try to specifically find the piece is absolutely atrocious. Okay. Searching for it, at least I'll be able to search for the specific aspect. Filters, being able to filter through, like, I want helmets, I want weapons, I want rings, whatever it is, some sort of filter function for the tab, a stash tab. But this also applies to, let's say, your inventory as well. Why don't I have a search function for my inventory? Why don't I have some sort of filter function for my inventory? Perhaps auto sorting, right? Let's say I want rares at the top, legendaries at the bottom, or whatever. These types of inventory management, stash management, just being able to look for your items. And even more so than that, a really nice quality of life would be some sort of loot filter, right? Being able to basically ignore all items that weren't ancestral rares and then only see the ancestral rares and legendary ancestral pieces, or even maybe legendary sacreds and regular legendary items. Those could be also filtered through. Things like these make the game easier to play, and the key moment is less annoying. There's a lot of quit moments in this game where if someone pulls open the stash tab and they see this, they're like, yeah, I'm just not even gonna look for the piece, I'm kind of done. So yeah, that is brutal. But on top of that, we don't even have the ability to really get a bunch of stash tabs, right? I just particularly manage everything very, very closely here, and I'm on my Eternal Realm character, so I've kind of gone through a lot of items. But on the seasonals, we have a ton of hearts that need to be sorted through. You have multiple characters that have a ton of gear, right? And a lot of people don't even know what they're wanting at the current moment. So having additional stash tabs is a necessity as well. But then you consider a couple of other changes, like the CC changes. Yeah, these help. But I think the bigger thing for the end game players, the people that are kind of participating in the points where CC would matter, is actually just making the loot fun, right? CC is annoying, yes, but I think one of the bigger things is when you're actually participating in the game, there's a lot of annoying things and a lot of not a lot of exciting things, which is kind of odd, right? A lot of the times you have to have some sort of dopamine, some sort of excitement in these games to want to continue playing. And loot in this game is probably one of the most boring aspects of the game, and one of the most boring things in ARPGs at large. There's two things to this. One is that all the stats in terms of itemization is a little bit boring. This isn't as big of an issue, in my opinion. Some casual players like this more, so I don't think this is necessarily the bigger problem. The bigger problem is the excitement about picking up items and how that's completely diminished with the fact that ancestral rares and legendaries, ancestral legendaries, are essentially the same piece, right? When you pick up a legendary, it can be as good as a rare and vice versa. So when you pick up those ancestral legendaries, even though they seemingly are the most powerful items in the game, they're actually just as good as the ancestral rares in terms of stats, okay? There's no excitement when you drop a legendary because oftentimes, well, you're not really going to be replacing your gear. And the same thing applies to uniques, because uniques in this game are pretty mediocre. In fact, most classes don't even use uniques in a lot of their builds, the druid being one of the exceptions to that. So this kind of diminishes the fun aspect about 80% of the game, which is loot grinding in the end game. And that leads me to the last point, which is end game content. This is a little bit harder to talk about, and there's a lot of suggestions that can be made, right? You can add raids for a more MMORPG style. You can add some sort of repeatable dungeon that is more exciting than what we're doing right now. You can add some sort of open world content, more world bosses that are actually worth doing, world or uber bosses, right? These types of things, which are going to be addressed potentially in season 2. But one thing's for sure, and that is nightmare dungeons are not the ticket right now. And this is kind of hard to address in between seasons, adding a whole new section of content. But nightmare dungeons just don't entice people to play. They're like Greater Rifts in Diablo 3. And yeah, the people who enjoy Diablo 3 might enjoy Greater Rift or Nightmare Dungeons in this game. But actually, Diablo 3 has a very different playstyle than Diablo 4. So even the people that enjoyed those might not be necessarily enjoying Nightmare Dungeons. But that doesn't mean that the game is completely down and out. I think that Diablo 4 can be revived for Season 2. It's just a matter of how willing they are to go to implement some of these things that we've been asking for since like day one. It's kind of awkward that like I'm making this video and you could like look back at another video and I've basically said all of these in a video or multiple videos across many videos many times. It's nothing new. And that's kind of the sad part of this, is that it's like day one type of stuff, or even like beta level stuff. I remember in beta when we were dropping things in the stash, you could say that some of the things needed search functions or filters, or even more stash tabs. These were complaints back from betas. So we'll see. 1.1.3, it is a nice change, but it's definitely not enough. So we'll see if they end up making changes for Season 2. And I'll keep you updated. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all for the next one.